My daughter's husband poured red wine over my head at Thanksgiving dinner in front of 20 family members, then tore my late husband's photograph in half. My daughter said I deserved it for embarrassing him. I said nothing, went to my room, and locked the door. The next morning, when they came down for breakfast, they saw Detective Martinez sitting at my kitchen table with a folder marked Evidence. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Linda. I'm 64 years old, and I spent 37 years as a cardiac nurse before retiring 3 years ago. The same week I hung up my scrubs, I buried my husband Robert. Heart attack. Ironic, isn't it? I spent decades saving other people's hearts, but couldn't save his. Robert and I built our lake house together over 20 summers. Every plank of the deck, every stone in the fireplace, we chose together. After he died, this house became my sanctuary. The place where I could still feel him in the morning light on the water, in the creak of the porch swing we installed the summer before he passed. My daughter Melissa is 35. She was always Daddy's girl. When Robert died, she took it hard. Maybe that's why I didn't see the changes in her clearly, or maybe I just didn't want to. Melissa married Brandon 6 years ago. He's a financial advisor. Or he was. These days, I'm not sure what he does besides play golf and talk about the big deals that are always just around the corner. He's 38, drives a leased BMW he can barely afford, and wears suits that cost more than my monthly utilities. I never liked Brandon. Robert didn't either, though he tried to hide it for Melissa's sake. "Give him time, Lynn," Robert would say. "People can surprise you." Well, Brandon surprised me all right, just not in the way Robert hoped. Last March, Melissa called crying. Brandon's investment firm had collapsed. They'd lost everything. Could they stay with me? Just for a few months, until they got back on their feet? What was I supposed to say? She's my daughter. My only child. They moved in on a rainy Tuesday. I helped them unpack. Brandon didn't carry a single box. He spent the afternoon on his phone, pacing my deck in his expensive shoes, barking about lawyers and regulations, and how none of this was his fault. The first week was fine. Melissa helped with cooking. We watched our old favorite shows together. It felt almost nice, having her close again. The second week, things shifted. Brandon started making comments. "You know, Linda, this kitchen layout is terribly inefficient. The Wi-Fi here is basically dial-up speed. Do you really need to keep Robert's old fishing gear taking up half the garage?" I bit my tongue. They were stressed, going through a hard time. By the third week, Brandon had taken over Robert's study. He'd moved Robert's books to boxes in the basement and set up his own office. When I mentioned it, Melissa said, "Mom, he needs a workspace. Dad's not using it anymore." That hurt. But I let it go. They'd been with me 4 months when I noticed the first discrepancy in my bank statement. Nothing major. $500. I thought maybe I'd forgotten a payment. I'm 64, not senile, but everyone makes mistakes. Then it was $800, then $1,200. I started keeping closer track. I'd been a nurse, not an accountant, but I knew how to read numbers. Someone was moving money from my accounts, small amounts, irregular intervals, designed not to trigger alerts. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I did what any good nurse does. I documented everything, screenshots, bank statements, dates and times. I kept it all in a locked drawer in my bedroom. Meanwhile, Brandon's behavior got worse. He'd comment on my clothes. "Linda, that sweater is very matronly." He'd criticize my cooking. "This is how my mother makes pot roast." "You're doing it wrong." Melissa stopped defending me. She'd just look away, embarrassed, of me, her own mother. The worst part? They weren't even looking for jobs. Brandon spent his days networking, which meant golf and long lunches. Melissa was focusing on her mental health, which meant sleeping until noon and online shopping with what I can only assume was my money. One evening in September, I came home from my book club to find Brandon in Robert's recliner. Robert's chair. The one I still couldn't sit in without crying. "We need to talk, Linda," Brandon said. Like this was his house and I was the guest. Melissa sat on the couch, twisting her wedding ring. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Melissa and I have been thinking," Brandon continued. "This house is too big for one person. It's not being used efficiently. We'd like to buy it from you." I stared at him. Buy it? We'll give you a fair price. Well below market, of course, since you'd be selling to family. You could move into one of those nice senior communities. Less maintenance, more appropriate for your age. My age, I repeated. Mom, Melissa finally spoke. It makes sense. You don't need all this space. And we need a fresh start. Somewhere that's ours. Somewhere that's ours. The house Robert and I built, that Robert died in. How exactly would you buy it? I asked calmly. You just told me you lost everything. Brandon smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. We have some assets you're not aware of. Plus, we've been saving since we moved in here. Saving, while living rent-free in my house, while I cooked their meals and paid their utilities and watched them drain my bank account. I'll think about it, I said. That night, I called my lawyer, Stephen Roberts. We'd worked together when Robert died, setting up the estate. Good man, honest. He'd been Robert's college roommate. Stephen, I need you to do something for me, I said. I need to know exactly what's happening with my accounts, every transaction for the past 6 months, and I need you to be discreet. It took him 3 weeks. What he found made my blood run cold. $82,000. Gone. Transferred in small amounts over 4 months. But here's what really gutted me. The signatures on the authorization forms weren't mine. They were forgeries. Good ones, but forgeries. And according to Stephen's investigator, Melissa had been present at the bank for at least 3 of those transactions. She'd helped Brandon set up the accounts where my money was being funneled. My daughter. My baby girl. The one I'd rocked through nightmares and driven to dance recitals and held through her first heartbreak. She knew. She helped him. I didn't cry. I'd cried myself empty when Robert died. This was different. This was cold, clear rage. What do you want to do? Stephen asked. I want evidence. Real evidence. Enough to prove what they did. And then, I paused. And then I'll decide. We set a trap. Stephen had me open a new investment account. $1.4 million. My actual retirement savings, plus Robert's life insurance, plus the sale of some property we'd owned. I'd been careful with it. Invested wisely. It was supposed to be my security for the rest of my life. I left the documents on my desk, just accidentally, where Brandon would definitely see them during one of his unauthorized visits to my study. He found them within 3 days. That evening at dinner, Brandon was different, solicitous, almost kind. Linda, this chicken is delicious. Best you've made. Thanks, Mom, Melissa echoed, though she'd barely touched her food. You know, Brandon said, I've been thinking, we should do something special for Thanksgiving. Really make it a family affair. Your sister, your cousins, everyone. What do you think? My sister Janet lives in Florida. We talk once a month. We're not close. That's unexpected, I said. Family is important, Brandon said, reaching across to pat my hand. His palm was clammy, especially as we get older. You've been so generous letting us stay here. We want to show our appreciation. Translation. They'd seen the account statements. They were going to butter me up, wait for me to add them to the will then. What? I didn't want to think about what came after then. But I said yes to Thanksgiving. I even offered to cook the turkey. The next 3 weeks, they were model guests. Brandon cleaned the garage without being asked. Melissa did laundry and actually smiled at me. They were trying so hard. I almost felt bad for what I was planning. Almost. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and crisp. Perfect lake effect weather. I was up at 5 preparing the turkey. By 8, the house smelled like rosemary and butter, and all the holidays Robert and I had shared in this kitchen. My sister Janet arrived first with her husband Tom. Then my cousin Marie and her kids. Then the neighbors we'd invited, the Hendersons and the Rodriguezes. By noon, we had 20 people crammed into the lake house, laughing and drinking and pretending everything was normal. Brandon held court in the living room, telling stories about his Wall Street days that I knew were 90% fiction. Melissa played hostess, refilling drinks and passing appetizers like this was her house. At dinner, we squeezed around the extended table. Robert's brother Michael sat at the head where Robert used to sit. I took my usual spot. Brandon made sure he was next to me. I'd like to make a toast, Brandon announced, standing with his wine glass. Everyone quieted. To Linda, he said, raising his glass toward me. The most generous mother-in-law a man could ask for. You've opened your home to us in our time of need. You've shown us what real family means. We're so grateful. Here, here, everyone chorused. I smiled and sipped my wine. In fact, Brandon continued, Melissa and I have been talking. We'd like to make our arrangement permanent. We'd like to buy the lake house from Linda so she can enjoy a well-deserved retirement somewhere more manageable. The room went quiet. Janet's fork stopped midway to her mouth. We think, Brandon went on, that Linda would be much happier in a senior living community, somewhere with activities and people her own age. This house is too much for one elderly woman to maintain. Elderly. I was 64 and still hiked 5 miles every morning. Of course, Brandon said. We'd give Linda a fair price, and she'd be welcome to visit any time. Visit. My own house. Michael stood up. Now wait just a minute. It's fine, Michael, I said quietly. Let him finish. Brandon's smile widened. The point is, Linda deserves to relax, to not worry about mortgages and maintenance and property taxes, to just enjoy her golden years. Don't you think, Linda? 20 pairs of eyes turned to me. What I think, I said slowly, is that you're right about one thing, Brandon. I do deserve not to worry. I stood up, walked to the sideboard, and picked up Robert's photograph, the one in the silver frame. Our wedding day. We were so young. I especially shouldn't have to worry, I continued, about someone stealing from me, forging my signature, draining my accounts while pretending to care about me. Brandon's face went white. I don't know what you're... $82,000, I said. Over 4 months. Small transfers, irregular amounts. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Mom, Melissa stood up, her voice shaking. You're confused. You're old. You forget things. I'm not confused, I cut her off. I have bank statements, screenshots, dates and times, and I have something else. I looked at Brandon. The signature on those authorization forms? It's good. I'll give you that. But it's not mine, and forgery is a felony. The room was dead silent. Brandon's jaw clenched. You can't prove anything, can't I? I met his eyes. Do you want to bet your freedom on that? That's when he snapped. He grabbed his wine glass and threw the contents at me. Red wine, expensive Cabernet, all over my hair, my face, my white blouse. Someone gasped. I think it was Marie, but Brandon wasn't done. He grabbed Robert's photograph from my hands and tore it, right down the middle. Robert's face on one side, mine on the other. You pathetic old woman, Brandon snarled. You think you're so smart? You think anyone cares about your dead husband or your precious house? You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing. I stood there, wine dripping down my face, holding the 2 halves of my wedding photo. Michael lunged for Brandon. Tom grabbed his arm. The room erupted in shouts. And Melissa, my daughter, said the words that broke something fundamental inside me. Mom, you embarrassed him. In front of everyone. What did you expect? I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I didn't recognize the woman staring back. You're right, I said quietly. I should have expected this. I set down the torn photograph pieces, walked upstairs to my bedroom, and locked the door. I could hear the chaos downstairs. Raised voices, arguments, doors slamming. Eventually, cars leaving. I sat on my bed, still covered in wine, and I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Stephen. Execute plan. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Then I showered, changed into my pajamas, and went to sleep. The next morning, Black Friday, I woke up at 6. I made coffee, set out pastries from the bakery I'd bought days before, and waited. At 7:45, there was a knock at my door. Detective Maria Martinez looked exactly like her photo. Early 40s, no-nonsense expression, a folder under her arm. Stephen was with her, carrying his briefcase. Thank you for coming, I said, letting them in. Are you sure about this, Linda? Stephen asked. I thought about the wine, the photograph, Melissa's face. I'm sure. At 7:58, I heard movement upstairs. Brandon and Melissa's bedroom door opening. Footsteps on the stairs. They came into the kitchen, arguing. Told you not to lose your temper, Melissa was saying. She deserved it. She was trying to. They stopped dead when they saw Detective Martinez and Stephen at my kitchen table. Good morning, I said calmly. I was making eggs. Coffee? Brandon stared. Who the hell is this? Detective Martinez stood. I'm Detective Martinez, Financial Crimes Unit. And you must be Brandon Pierce. The color drained from his face. This is my lawyer, Stephen Roberts, I continued, flipping an egg. We've been having a very interesting conversation about bank fraud and forgery. Melissa grabbed the counter. Mom, what are you doing? What I should have done months ago, I said, protecting myself. Detective Martinez opened her folder. Mr. Pierce, Mrs. Pierce, we have evidence of multiple unauthorized transfers from Linda Chen's accounts. We also have signature analysis showing forgery on bank authorization forms. Would you like to explain? This is ridiculous, Brandon blustered, but his voice shook. Linda is elderly. She's confused about her finances. I'm 64, and I was a cardiac nurse for 37 years, I interrupted. I think I can read a bank statement. Stephen pulled out a stack of papers. We have video from the bank showing Melissa accompanying Brandon on 3 occasions when fraudulent transfers were made. We have text messages between you discussing Linda's accounts. We have... Stop, Melissa said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Just stop. She sank into a chair. We needed the money. Brandon's firm collapsed. We had debts. We had nowhere to go. So you stole from me, I said. From your own mother. We were going to pay you back. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. Once we got the house, once we sold it, we were going to sell my house? I set down my spatula. The house your father and I built? You were going to steal my money, manipulate me into selling my home, and then pay me back with my own money? The eggs were burning. I didn't care. Detective Martinez looked at me. Mrs. Chen, do you want to press charges? I looked at my daughter, at my son-in-law, at the 2 people who had eaten my food, slept under my roof, and betrayed me in every possible way. No, I said. Everyone stared at me. Mom, Melissa started. I'm not finished, I said. I don't want to press charges, but I do have conditions. I pulled out a document Stephen and I had prepared. A contract. You will repay the $82,000, I said. You have 2 years. There will be a payment plan. Stephen has calculated what you can afford based on actual employment, not fantasy finance jobs. Brandon opened his mouth. I held up my hand. You will both get real jobs. I don't care what they are. Retail, food service, manual labor. You will work, and you will attend family therapy with me every Tuesday evening for the next year. This is insane, Brandon said. The alternative is, I press charges and you go to prison for fraud, I said calmly. Your choice. He shut up. You will move out of my lake house, I continued. I've purchased a small rental property in town. 2 bedrooms, basic utilities. The rent will be $400 a month, which will come directly from your paychecks before you see them. I looked at Melissa. She was crying silently. And you, I said to her, will volunteer 20 hours a week at the cardiac unit where I worked. You will see what real work looks like. You will learn what I did for 37 years while you thought I was just Mom. What if we refuse? Brandon asked. Detective Martinez smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then I make some calls and you're arrested by noon. Stephen slid the contract across the table. Sign it. Both of you. They signed. After Detective Martinez and Stephen left, the 3 of us sat in my kitchen. The eggs were definitely ruined. Why didn't you just turn us in? Melissa asked finally. I thought about that. About Robert, about the daughter I'd raised, about the woman I'd become since he died. Because you're my daughter, I said. And because your father would have wanted me to try. One more time. I'm so sorry, Mom, Melissa whispered. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, I said. But it's a start. Brandon didn't apologize. I didn't expect him to. They moved out the following week. I helped them pack, which felt surreal. Melissa cried the whole time. Brandon was silent, probably calculating his next move. I stood on my porch and watched them drive away in their loaded U-Haul to a life they'd have to actually work for. That night, I sat in Robert's recliner for the first time since he died. I pulled out the 2 halves of our wedding photo and laid them on my lap. I don't know if I did the right thing, Rob, I said to the empty room. Maybe I should have pressed charges. Maybe I'm being manipulated again. The house settled around me, the familiar creaks and whispers, but I had to try. One more time. 8 months have passed now. Melissa works as a server at a breakfast diner. She's exhausted all the time, but she shows up for her hospital shifts. Last week, one of my old colleagues told me Melissa helped calm down a patient having a panic attack. She was kind. She was good at it. Brandon works at a sporting goods store. He hates it. But he shows up, and the payments come every month like clockwork. Tuesday therapy is hard. We're working through a lot. Some weeks I want to throw them both out and be done with it. Other weeks, I see glimpses of the daughter I used to know. They've paid back $18,000 so far. 64 to go. I had the wedding photo professionally restored. It sits on my mantle now, right next to a new photo. Me and Melissa at the hospital, both wearing scrubs, taken by one of the nurses. Melissa looks tired, but she's smiling. It's real. Yesterday, Melissa called me. Not on Tuesday. Just because. "Mom," she said, "my shift ends at 3. Do you want to get coffee?" It's a small thing. Coffee. But it's something. "I'd like that," I said. I still don't know if this will work. If they'll actually change, if Melissa and I can rebuild what was broken, if Brandon will ever be more than a man going through the motions. But I'm trying. Because that's what mothers do. We try. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.